Hello, welcome to the recording, and we'll be starting. Today we'll be talking about how to use erotic mind control to improve the quality of your life and your clients and just about everyone. I'm really excited about this course because it's really going to change a couple of things, I think, and answer some questions I've had for a long, long time. So if you're ready, type ready in the question box. Great. Now, what would happen if you could release the power of your erotic mind to basically live a life of passion and enjoyment again? And this course is really focused on people that, especially if you're in a long-term relationship, as what generally has a tendency to have, we call, as relationships mature, they cool. Well, not everybody wants that. It's like, how many times you heard someone say, I really love my wife, husband, spouse, partner, whatever, but it's almost like we're roommates. But what if we could use some of the tools we have at our disposal to kind of bring that back into line? And it's no secret that everyone wants a vibrant and healthy sex life, but many people are frustrated with their sex lives. And it's a topic that no one wants to talk about. Doctors, professionals, basically, we look at it sometimes as a performance issue, or we look at it as issues which may or may not be what we really want to work on. And these kind of issues can manifest themselves as weight gain, substance abuse, domestic issues, not just violence, but just, anger, rage, resentment, taking it out on the kids, and many, many more. And as practitioners, NLPers, hypnotists, change agents, psychologists, sometimes people present with one problem and we see it as another. So if people are experiencing this kind of difficulty, let's try. Well, first of all, people think erotic issues or sexuality issues are scheduling problems. One of the great things about America is we're optimists. We like to look at a problem, break it down into small chunks, figure out how to fix it, and then go ahead and try to move on, right? It's what's made America what it is, and it's kind of rippled out to the rest of the world, right? And as NLPers, we really take to that anyway. Look at a problem, break it down into small enough chunks. But then one of the bad things that happens is people take a general idea that may work in specific instances, and it becomes, this is the answer to the question, right? Without ever finding out what the entire question is, right? And so it becomes like a scheduling issue. That's a big thing in this when you're having relationship problems or intimacy issues, basically sex issues, right? And again, intimacy and sex are not necessarily the same thing. I know that some people get upset when I start talking about it that way, but it's true. But they think it's a scheduling issue. So date nights, things like this, which is fine, except maybe your erotic part of your life may not fall well to scheduling, right? And maybe that's not the issue, right? And then again, people confuse intimacy with passion. This can be a biggie, right? They confuse intimacy with passion, and they're not the same thing. And then what begins to happen too is also people believe old models. Our models have been around for quite a while, and they were actually outdated a long time ago, but we're still living with that model. I mean, if over 50, I think it's 55% of the first marriages end in divorce, and like over 60% of second marriages, why are we living with a model that is not true anymore? But we push an ideal which may not be there anymore, right? And also, 100 years ago, nobody lived this long. Nobody thought that in your 50s and 60s you could have a vibrant, active, healthy sex life, right? But it's one of the things that are going on, right? So it's old models that may not translate into the real world. And then there's all the myths, that is actually fed by society. When you look at the literature, a love that will last forever, a soulmate that, through the ages, which is great. And part of you wants to believe that, but is it really true? I've had people, sadly, one time someone decided they needed to get a divorce because they really weren't in love with their significant other. And people say, why is that? Well, they find other people attractive. Well, what's that got to do with loving your significant other? Well, if I really loved them, I wouldn't even see other people. Really. That's interesting. But people have that, right? Also, the whole idea that, these myths just propagate. I only have eyes for you in songs and literature. It's just myths that just no longer work, right? So, and they feed into the problem. Some other reasons why it doesn't work. When you talk about, here's a little interesting fact. When you think about passion and desire, certain chemicals in your brain light up and certain parts of your body light up if we were doing a mapping emotions in the body. Great, fabulous, wonderful. But when you talk about intimacy, which is based on closeness, those neural pathways and chemicals in your brain actually calm down. So then you have passion on one hand, intimacy on another, and they don't always line up totally. In fact, it's two different parts, right? Because passion and excitement need a sense of the unexpected, a risk, a spark, if you will, right? It needs something to get you going. It's why when you first fall in love, there's that excitement. You don't know your partner. Will they like this? Will they like that, right? So there's all this unknown. And going back to the myths, one of the things that happen is there's the myth that if I'm really in love and my partner's really in love with me, I don't even have to tell them certain things about myself, like sexually, what I like, what I don't like. They'll just know. Well, why would they just know if they don't know? But it's all these myths. But anyway, but that's what adds to the excitement. Will they like what I like? Will this happen? Will that happen? So there's that risk, a spark. Oh my God. And right, which is great. But then as you get into comfort and security, those things tamp down. So on one hand, we're driven toward comfort and security, but on the other hand, that comfort and security drives down that sense of passion, that sense of drive, right? So it's kind of interesting. Now there's things you can do to ignite those, but not everybody has it, right? And then there's all the other issues that can come in, the stress of our current lifestyle. Two income families, which is the norm, not the exception anymore. Also kids, when you have kids, oh my God, that adds a lot of stuff, right? And then what also generally happens is a cooling of the passion as a relationship matures, right? And then it may not be as easy as people think to relight the candle, if you will, to get the passion going. Also, the politically correct crowd has kind of hijacked and kind of put these two words together: intimacy, sexuality, desire, and passion. They're not the same thing, right? But now it becomes politically incorrect to talk about certain things. Well, you can be intimate with your partner and have a rotten sex life, right? Or vice versa. You can have a great sex life and not feel all that intimate, right? Oh my God, but that's politically incorrect to say that because we think it's this whole continuum, which may or may not be true. So thanks to political correctness, sex has been hijacked. You can't even talk about it, right? And the PC crowd that usually drives this is usually the most uptight, miserable people on the planet. It's almost like they don't want anybody to have fun, so they're going to stop it, right? Also, how many times have you heard, I really love my partner, but we're more like roommates. We share a lot, but there's no spark, there's no drive, there's no passion, right? And again, what also happens when these kind of issues begin to pop up, many times, especially in the medical community, it becomes a performance issue, not an erotic or sensuality or sexual issue. If it's a guy, here's some Viagra. A friend of mine, an MD, we were talking about this, and he said, well, yeah, he's always surprised. He just had a couple people, same kind of scenario, guys in their 50s, no vascular issues, relatively healthy, said they had problems in this area, so they asked for Viagra. I gave them a script for Viagra. They took 100 milligrams of Viagra. Nothing happened, right? So they were wanting a different drug. And he's like, well, that should work, right? So there's other issues going on, but we confuse a sexual performance issue with a sensuality and erotic and things like that issue. And then when you add into it erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, some of the things that could be with that of course hypnosis and NLP are good for, it becomes an even more continuum. And the reason I like to talk about this, and it's not, I've been thinking about doing it for a long, long time, is I'll give a couple cases. First one is Maggie. We'll use that name. Maggie she was in my clinic. She was a serial dieter, right? Not that she, killed frosted flakes or anything like that, but she dieted and lost weight off and on her whole adult life, right? Up and down, up and down, up and down. Great. Now she's retired, living in Florida, came to me, And we were, and she'd done Jenny Craig Nutrisystem, exercise, done all the things you can do, MetaFast, all kinds of programs, right? So I always thought that's kind of interesting. But anyway, we start working, and we're working on this. And I don't work on so much what you eat as what's eating you. So, and she always had this one bridge she would hit or wall. So I knew we'd probably get there. And we did. So she was in a long-term program. And after she dropped about 35 pounds, she comes back and goes, "Doc, can I talk to you?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, it's kind of private." I'm like, "Okay." And I'm thinking, well, it's either sex, drugs, or money, because that's the things nobody wants to talk about. And she goes, it dawned on me that she would do things to lose weight. And she was a beautiful woman. She goes, every time I'd hit this goal, and the last time she really hit the goal was her youngest daughter's wedding. And she goes, and then she just hit this goal again, and they were doing something out by the pool, and her husband was commenting, how good she looked, and he started giving her attention, right? We know what that means. And I'm like, your problem? And she goes, well, I love my husband. I really love him. And we share, we raised kids, we got a great life, but I don't want to be with him. It's like, I'm like, okay, now we can work on this. But this is why she would sabotage it, because as long as she kept the weight on, he didn't, approach her in that way. And so it just kind of would die off, and that was fine. But then as she would get attractive, it was a continuum that we needed to work on. And so we did a few things. And of course I said, would your husband be willing to come in? And she goes, yeah. So anyway, we worked on it. Happy ending. They were fine, right? Now let's talk about the case of Maggie, of Julie and Joe. Now, the names are changed to protect the innocent. Anyway, again, weight loss client. It was the lady. She's coming to me. Or the case of Joe first. He was seeing me for substance abuse issues. And again, usually we're the clinic of last resort. He'd been through treatment. He'd been in and out of AA for a long, long time. And he would relapse every 30, 60, 90 days, right? Usually about 96 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, he'd relapse, right? So I'm like, this is interesting. So, he's coming to me. We're working on it. And I said, well, when we get to this point, we got him going. Great. I wanted to come back. And he did about 7 months. He goes, it's hard for him to stay in the program, not want to go out. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? I said, tell me. Then we gathered more history, right? I had to wait till the problem presented. And what it was is he was divorced. He'd been divorced twice. And he said, substance abuse was the reason I got divorced each time. Alcohol was his drug of choice. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And so he'd been single for a while, and every time he'd start sobering up, after a few months, he'd start dating. Either he tried women in the program, he tried women outside the program, seeing if that was the answer. No. Sooner or later, he would just like push him away and go relapse. I'm like, okay, we need to work on this, right? And so we started talking, and I said, so, you start dating these women, and he goes, yeah. And I go, how's your sex life? And he goes, well, it starts out okay. And then, I'm like, okay. So we're gathering more information. And finally I just said, well, where do you drink when you go drink? And he looks at me and goes, is that important? I said, well, yeah. Do you drink at home? Do you go out? And he goes, well, I usually go out. I'm like, okay. And finally, after doing this for many years, I just looked at him and said, Joe, are you bisexual or primarily gay or just bi or something like that? And he looks at me and he gets, first he starts the rage response, then he backs down and he goes, why? And I said, well, I've seen this before, because if that's a base part of your personality and you really want that kind of intimacy in your life, that kind of contact, you can, it's not that you're not functioning well, in a heterosexual relationship. You could be a great lover, but it's fulfilling to a point, but then there comes another point, you want something different. It's like, so you go out, but you can't justify that part of your life. So you have to go have a few drinks, or you go to the gay bar to hook up with somebody where there's alcohol, and that takes the edge off, and yada, yada, yada. And he looks at me all downtrodden. And I go, Joe, it is cool with me. I don't care what you do. We need to make you comfortable with this part of your personality, or you're going to be one of these guys in and out your whole life, eventually kill somebody in a drunk driving accident, end up in prison, or just destroy your, get wet brain, all this other stuff. And so we began to work on it, right? Again, happy ending. Now the case of Ben in June. This is a good one. Again, June was coming to me, weight loss, having a great, she's doing great, and late 30s, early 40s, excuse me, a couple of kids, married quite a while to her husband, and she comes in after, I hadn't seen her for a while, she got the weight off, was doing fine, she comes in, Doc, can I talk to you? I said, sure. And so we're doing a session, we're sitting there talking, and she goes, I thought this would work. And I go, what? She goes, I lost the weight. You know, she'd had a couple kids, put on some weight, a little bit after the first kid, a lot more after the second kid. And I said, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, her husband and her used to have a real vibrant sex life, really active. They were into role play, a little bit of like bondage and discipline, light S&M. Okay, fine, right? I'm like, okay, cool. She's looking to see if I got a response. And if you're going to work with people with this, you got to be like, okay, cool, whatever. Keep talking. And nothing. She thought, well, maybe it was her weight. And partly she didn't want to get back into that because she didn't like her body image, so she didn't want to do this. Okay, that's fine. That's very common. Another thing with weight loss clients, that can be an issue, right? They put weight on to keep people away, right? And then when they get the weight off, people come in, they can't handle it, they push people away. And we could say, oh, it's a commitment or an intimacy issue. It could be sexuality. So anyway, I'm like, okay, so now you're looking good again. She goes, yes. And she was. And nothing's going on. She's approaching her husband. He's putting her off. She's like, oh, my God, I'm beginning to think, is he having an affair or this or that? And I'm like, well, I can't work with him unless he wants to come in. And she goes, well, I asked him, and he said he'd come talk to you. So anyway, I'm talking to him, right? He wasn't my client, but now he was. And so we start talking, and I just said, you know, there's some issues here. And what's going on? And he goes, again, downtrodden. Well, I said, look, I know you guys are into the BDSM and you used to play a lot and you know, role play, all that's great, but what's going on? He goes, well, she's the mother of my children. I go, your point? Well, I can't do that to the mother of my children. You know, I go, well, you did it before, but now she's the mother of my children. And that's just the way he was raised. So all of a sudden, once they crossed a certain plateau, that part he just couldn't do anymore. I go, do you miss it? And he goes, oh my God, yes. You know, and so I go, okay, we need to reprogram some of these thoughts, some of these beliefs, some of these attitudes, right? Which is quite common, right? Great. So we have options, right? What would happen if you could learn to use your NLP, which now for this program I call No Limit Pleasure, to help others and maybe yourself by, if you want to call it, mastering the aspects of sex, because it opens up your mind, because your mind is your largest erotic organ, right? Followed by your skin or vice versa. But anyway, everything happens in the mind. You can have a hot dream and, my God, everything gets going, right? And this can help your clients and yourself live a life of passion and desire. And if you maybe rekindle those old feelings whenever and wherever you want, and reconnect again with your significant other in deeper ways. Or if you don't have a relationship now, to once you get the next relationship, to connect in a way it doesn't go away. And so for this to happen, what you need to do is basically 6 steps. Well, first of all, is learn about the scope of erotic issues, right? It's much deeper than people think. It's not just intimacy. It's not just commitment. And it's not just sex. It's a continuum of all these things, right? And in fact, people confuse one with the other, right? And you need to learn how, you know, intimacy versus erotic sex, how security can rob your sexuality, right? Or that passion. And also, what's your erotic IQ? People don't even realize this kind of thing. They don't discover it, you know? And as practitioners, these are subjects you have to be, if you're going to work with people like this, you're going to have to be comfortable talking about it. Kind of like once you step into the addiction world, you got to be comfortable with certain topics and know a lot about a lot of the different addictions, whether you know them personally or not is irrelevant, right? And then, you know, we have to look at some of the myths that are out there, right? The Puritan myths, the love myths, you know, how inhibitions, right, can happen. And then how to reprogram your mind, you know, and then also learn about fantasy, pleasure, and your sexual IQ. Again, your I look at it this way. Your erotic IQ is personal. It's what turns you on. You know, the things in your life that turn you on, that don't turn you on, things you'll do, things you won't do, limits, boundaries, all that's fine. But you need to know your erotic IQ so you understand that. Now, kind of above that would be your sexual IQ, because it's a great big world. There's a lot of things out there you may have no desire to ever even explore, but especially for practitioners, you need to know what they are. So if a client does mention like some of these kind of things, you'll at least kind of have an idea of what they are, right? And again, it's just knowing about them, right? Because if you don't know about them, how they work a little bit, when I went back running a treatment center, alcohol and drug treatment center, I had to really bone up on all the pain pills and the new heroin epidemic and things like that, because, I hadn't really worked with that clientele in a long while, and it's changed. So I had to like look at it, think about it, get some info why people, step in with the pain pills and then jump to heroin because it's easier to get and it's cheaper, right? So anyway, I learned all that, and it's like, interesting, right? So I could talk to people about it. That's it, and understand the words and the language and what it was, right? And then you could begin to help people make sex fun again and maybe hot, because you miss it. You want it back, right? Because people want it all in our day and age, and that's fine, right? And we have the tools and the secrets, right? We have NLP, no limit programming, no limit pleasure, right? And hypnosis can be wonderful to help people explore this. Even if you teach your clients, one of the things I'll be doing is how to teach your clients, not just self-hypnosis, but if you got a couple, how to teach them to do light hypnosis on each other, right? So they can access this part of their life so they can make it even better, right? Great. And then how to really get into no limit pleasure and learn different pleasures in different ways. Because as things change, things mature, things move around, you can do different things, right? So step one is understanding the scope of the issue, how deep it really is, how it manifests itself in other things. Again, for us hypnotists, weight, all the weight issues, substance abuse, depression, anxiety, stress, the list goes on and on. Intimacy, erotic issues, right? We're going to learn those, how they manifest. Again, weight loss, low self-esteem, divorce, anger, rage, right? And then also begin to look at mistaking performance issues from erotic or intimacy issues, right? Again, hypnosis, NLP can be used to help men overcome erectile dysfunction if there's no physical reason. And a lot of this, look at some of the research done with placebos. Give a guy a blue pill that's nothing but a sugar pill, but if he's convinced it's Viagra, he'll be knocking over tree stumps. I mean, it works, right? It's all in the mind, and your mind and body are connected, right? And also, looking at erotic and intimacy as two different things, right? And then learn why intimacy can destroy passion, right? Again, how the neurochemicals work, how things work, how we can cross things over, how we can move things around, right? And things that warp pleasure, attitudes, beliefs, that warp pleasure, and things about intimacy that we need to look at, and to figure out, can you be close to somebody? Can you be intimate and attracted at the same time, right? And begin to realize that desire and democracy may not work together as well as we think they do. Again, the politically correct crowd will take an ideal, which may not actually happen in the real world, and talk about that, which may, destroy things. And you can be, this one's a big one, you can be liberated but repressed, right? Now think of the juxtaposition in someone's mind, and I've had this happen with a few clients. It was a female. I'll just think of one. We'll call her Betty. She was a CEO of a small corporation. I had an MBA, very successful woman, made more money than her husband. That was fine. They've been together a long time. There was no issues there. But she was liberated. She was a 21st century woman, right? And again, I was working with her for weight loss. And again, it manifests itself at weight loss. She started losing the weight. And we started talking. And she goes, she wanted me to work with this. And what it was is she, again, thought herself 21st century woman, liberated, power, control, focus, good to go. Husband was a contractor, blue collar guy. She loved him, been together a long time. And she goes, but I'm this liberated, take charge woman. But when the door closes, that's my term, right? She wants to be submissive. She wants to just give that control over to somebody else. Tell me what to do. Tell me what you like. Da, 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 da. And her husband was fine. That's been their whole relationship. But she started to feel guilty because that's not what again, the PC crowd, it came up one time, and some people were talking about how women that were submissive, or if they were into that, 50 Shades of Grey, being bondage, that's not a truly liberated woman, and she would need to work on this, this, and this, forgetting that pleasure may not have anything to do with what's politically correct, right? Maybe you can't have both, and she needed to work on that, and we just flipped some things in her head, worked great, right? Step 3 is look at our Puritan issues that ripple through our issue, right? Is sex dirty? Some people say only if it's done right, but we got to work with beliefs that steal your passion. Beliefs, attitudes, things that can steal your passion. And look at why is it so hard to be intimate and passionate. And maybe you need breaks in your mind, or help people develop those breaks in their mind. And also begin to discover your erotic IQ. And we'll do it with ourselves just as a test case, because no one will know about this but you. And then when, if you're going to work with your clients, you can be comfortable with talking, not about yourself, but these are what, helping them discover their erotic IQ. And does their erotic IQ match up with their partners? This can be a big one, right? And then we'll look at fantasy and pleasure, why it's kind of poo-pooed in our society, going back to our Puritan values, right? And then we can develop some erotic blueprints, right? And then we'll also look at maybe how you were raised, or your history can reveal your desires, or what you like now, or what you want. And that's fine. And then we can reprogram it. We do it all the time if you want, to a certain level, right? But some people like vanilla ice cream. Other people like chocolate. Other people like strawberry, somewhat multiple flavors. We all like different things, and we can augment certain things, but you have a baseline, right? And that's what we can begin to work with and reveal. And that's called releasing your erotic mind. We're helping your clients release their erotic mind, right? And then we got fantasy and pleasure. Step 5, that was a double. Learn how to make sex fun again if you've lost that, Especially you get a couple, let's say they've raised a few kids, now the kids are maybe teenagers or maybe out of the house, right? And all of a sudden it's like, now what? How do you go back and rekindle that fun, right? And that's reprogramming the erotic mind. Maybe for different things. You're at a different level of your life. You want to do different things, right? And begin to free those passions. And also begin to learn about sexual IQ. Maybe just learn all the things that are out there, right? And that it's one of the things that, that, go Raiders. One of the things that 50 Shades of Grey did, right, was open up a whole bunch of people to a whole new lifestyle, When I was talking about this concept of teaching this class, I was at a couple conferences and talking it up. It was funny. It was 80-90% positive. 80 to 90% positive. Okay, I thought that was great. But I began to notice that it was all the women liked the idea of what I was going to be teaching and how I was going to teach it. It seems like I was getting a negative blowback from guys, right? And again, I was at my booth. I was talking to a couple people, and these women were asking me about it because I had a handout on it. And we're talking about it, and guy comes up, we're talking, he said, whatever, it's not for him, he doesn't need it. First of all, I hope my heart surgeon wants to learn about all aspects of heart surgery, even if he doesn't need it himself, for God's sakes. But anyway, we're standing at the booth, and after he walked away, these two ladies were there, and one lady a little bit older than me goes, and I said, well, this is common. It's the guys giving negatives. She goes, well, and I remember how she said it, and she goes, well, most guys confuse sex with intimacy and erotic aspects. I go, yeah. And she goes, and most guys think they're great at sex, And they're not. But they don't want to even talk about it and learn about it. And the other lady laughed, and I'm like, food for thought, right? Because it was just kind of interesting that I was getting this kind of feedback. And I was talking to a couple other people about this product, about what we're doing here, about your sexual IQ. And one lady said she'd been married like over 30 years. And when 50 Shades of Grey came out, she read the book, had her husband read the book. And I go, yes. And she goes, it saved my marriage. I go, really? She didn't have to go into detail. I'm like, cool. And then when she found out I was non-judgmental anyway, we talked a little bit more, and it was like, good for you, right? And it really liberated the erotic mind for both of them, right? And then step 6 is using hypnosis and NLP to release this passion, right? To develop those methods and to have some fun with it, right? Let me give you a quick example. First of all, I'd like you to close your eyes and just go on the inside and think about, and it's kind of known, well, those of us in NLP, we know you have your visual, your auditory, and your kinesthetics, right? And you like to communicate one of those 3 ways. Well, you also have that's your basic communication style. You also have a basic love style, love language, if you want to call it that. Are you visual, auditory, kinesthetic in that? In other words, how do you like to be shown that you're loved? Is it you want your significant other, your partner, whoever it is, to show you that they love you by maybe doing things, gifts, cards, presents, outward displays like that? That's great. It's great. Or is it you want to hear it? You need to be told, right? Constantly, you need to be told. Great. Or do you need to feel it? And not necessarily, I'm not just saying have sex, but cuddling, stroking of the hair, a hug, a kiss on the cheek. Which one of these? Maybe you want all 3, but which one is more? Because if you have one language of love and your partner has another, there can be a little bit of a clash there. So I'd like you to just think about how you communicate, how you really like it to be communicated to you. Because that's how you're doing it for your partner. And if there's any conflict, maybe that. Have you ever had this talk with your significant other about how you like to be shown that you're loved, which can maybe spark more passions, right? Great. Now what I'd like you to do, and only you need to know this, because this is another big mismatch that can happen, is again, with your eyes closed, take a deep breath and be totally honest with yourself. When all is said and done, when you close the door, as I say, would you rather be the type of person that totally takes charge of the erotic situation, telling the partner what you want, doing this, doing that, doing this, doing that? Great. Do you want to take charge? Are you dominant, right? Or when the door's closed, do you want to just go and let the other person guide and follow their lead? What do they want? Not that you may not discuss it in advance and you have your boundaries and all that, but which do you prefer? Do you want to be the dominant or the submissive? And how do you feel about that? And does your partner know this? Because again, when you're courting, go ahead and open your eyes. Whichever one of those you are, because again, when you're courting, male and female, you become a little bit more aggressive. You go after what you want. So maybe mixes well with your partner. But then again, as the relationship gels and becomes comfortable, you're going to revert back to your norm. Let's say you're a male and you were very aggressive and you're going after your partner and you get them and this and that. Now you've been married or together and things start to not cool, but all of a sudden you're more, sometimes you want to be, and sometimes you go back and forth, but you just want to be submissive. Tell me what you want, honey. I'll do whatever you want, right? Great. But then again, sometimes men can have guilt about being submissive, as some women can, right? Or, vice versa. It can go back and forth, right? So it's kind of interesting. It's just interesting because these are things that you need to be able to talk about to your clients if you're going to work with this. And maybe just this first level can fix a lot of problems. So what we just did is a quick journey to discover part of your erotic IQ, what you like, what you don't like. How do you like someone to express that they love you, right? So it's just like an entry, if you will. So number one is I want you to have an understanding of eroticism, what it is, what it isn't in this format, and there's many out there, right? So that's the first one. And result number 2 would be intimacy versus passion. Why people confuse the two, and maybe we need to somewhat separate them a little bit, right? And then discover what someone's erotic IQ is, right? And then help them reprogram it if they need to. And that's part of their erotic blueprints. You know, changing it, broadening the spectrum. You know, it's like sometimes like food. You really like this, but my God, I didn't know this other food existed. And when you get a taste of it, you go, I really like that. Maybe not all the time, but I really like that, right? And that comes into your sexual IQ and reprogramming some of those erotic blueprints to make things more exciting. And by doing this, we're using our tools to release it. Kind of cool, huh? Right? So introducing erotic mind control. And erotic mind control, I believe this is the best course on relationships, adult style, because it's honest, frank, brutal, no politically correct stuff. This is what happens in the real world. Because again, when you take the politically correct and you try to make that work in the real world, you know, it's one of these, in theory it'll work in practice. In practice, theory rarely works, right? And if you don't have this kind of information, this course, your clients may not experience true joy at every level, or especially for serial like weight gainers, substance abuse issue, constant depression, this could be it. And then you'll get started in, 45 minutes to an hour per week, because I'm going to have a webinar at first. And the first module, we'll talk about the problem. And these will probably run on Tuesdays and for about an hour. But they'll be video recorded and put into a membership site so you can review them as you need them. So the first module will be about really looking at the scope of the problem, how it manifests, how you can look for it, maybe bring it up. And then we'll look at intimacy or passion and what we need to do with that. And then we'll look at the erotic IQ, what yours is, or how to find, and also how to find it in other people. Love, the language of love, how do you like to be that? Also, what are your boundaries? What are your issues? What do you like? What do you not like? Are you a dominant? Are you submissive? Do you go back and forth? How about your partner? Because only by many people don't know this. And sometimes just by knowing this, just like when we learn NLP and we learn visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and you learn that you can communicate in different ways, you can communicate your eroticism in different ways. And part of that is reprogramming the mind, right? And then we'll learn about sexual IQ, all the things that are out there. And, things people may talk to you about. And first of all, you can't be shocked, necessarily. But there's some things you go, okay. And then we'll learn about no-limit pleasure, how to use this stuff to really take it to the next level. That's what we got with hypnosis and NLP, ladies and gentlemen, is the ability to really transform. You'll get a live discount to come to the live class. So I got one in Venice coming up in September. I think it's 27, 28. And I'll probably be offering live classes for those that really want to take this to the next level. There'll be a community. It'll be a membership site, so there'll be a community, lifetime access. You can go back and review each one of these, because the advantage of that, of course, to come to just a live class is it comes at you quickly and then goes away, and you can't review it. So the total value, if you added that up, is $23.73. I was going to sell it for, there's a mistake, for $397, but I'm going to offer it for $197 because this is info I want out there. Because it seems like, I talk a lot about what someone's mission is in life. What is their purpose, their passion, their mission? And I'm one that always says you're already living your mission. It's what you already do. And one of my themes, by the themes in your life, and one of my themes is freedom. Freedom, it started with alcohol and drug issues, financial freedom, things like this. This is another freedom. And that people need to be free from the inhibitions and the things that are holding them back from grasping those last little areas of true pleasure in our life. And we're going to have a live class in Venice, Florida. That's September 27th and 28th in Venice. If you want to sign up for the webinar, and you get in on the webinar, and you're doing the webinar, you can come to the live class. I have no problem, right? So go ahead and go here now. www.eroticmindcontrol.net. That's eroticmindcontrol.net. It's 100% risk-free. If for any reason in the next 30 days you want your money back, let me know. Of course, the catch is you'll lose access to the information in the community. So you have a decision to make. The good news is it's an easy decision, right? So go here now, www.eroticmindcontrol.net, right? Without it, your clients are going to stay stuck. You won't really help people live free, less income because it's a different market to begin to tap into. And in the current market with boomers aging, wanting to recapture this part of their life, as people being very vibrant in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, it's a whole new thing. And you have less fun because with it, you free clients from another area of pain. Maybe it's the pain of the relapsing and weight loss from substance abuse, depression, or the pain of not living life to its fullest. You free yourself because just like all of us, once you learn these techniques, it changes you. You'll have more fun because it can be some interesting clients. So what to do? Go to Erotic Mind Control, www.eroticmindcontrol.net to secure your spot right now. Hit the pay button and send your $197 to Dr. Will Horton. And you'll probably, if it doesn't happen right away, I'm in the process of changing the website, you'll receive your sign-in info really soon. And so go ahead and do that right now. I'd like to thank you for sharing your time and your effort with me because we can help heal the world. So again, it's eroticmindcontrol.net. So I'd like to thank you and I wish you the best.